Good afternoon, everyone. I pray that your Wednesday was filled with spaces and places of joy, of peace, of happiness, where you could laugh, where you could cry, where you could sing, where you could even just turn your neck a little bit more. Woo! Woo! It's actually getting better for those who have been hoping that I heal. I am healing, but again, it takes time. Yesterday, we were talking about optimism, being hopeful, seeing the glass as half full as opposed to half empty, and how being optimistic can make us smile. It can give us purpose in our life. It can give us something to aim for. But today, I want to talk about at least two instances where it would be good to be pessimistic. And yes, I did say that. It would be good to be pessimistic. And those has to do with dealing with two particular types of people. And I'm going to preface this by saying for most of the population, if we display behaviors that are caustic or problematic, or we have nasty attitudes or things like that, all of that can change. We can heal, we can restore, because typically those behaviors came from somewhere. We don't usually come out the womb being nasty people. We don't come out the womb being manipulative. That's typically not how we are designed. But there are two groups of people that I do say you should be pessimistic about their ability to grow or their ability to heal. The first group I'm going to talk about is sociopaths. Sociopaths are people who are not able to be empathetic. They lack that quality. Now you may say, well, I'm dealing with my husband or my wife or my partner and they don't seem to have any feelings. I'm not talking about that. There are people who, for whatever reason, based on what happened to them, have made the decision not to feel. Unconsciously, they decided that feeling was too painful, so they made that decision. They carefully keep their emotions under wraps. That's someone who's possibly been traumatized as a result of what happened to them. Sociopaths are not making a conscious decision. That's exactly who they are. Sociopaths are people who have a tendency to as children, kill animals for fun. They like to inflict pain on people. They make decisions without any regard to anyone else's feelings. You know, a lot of times I have found, being in the mental health field, that a lot of times in general population, we will label someone as being sociopathic if they are not willing to participate in therapy, or if they're really angry, or they don't appear to have a moral compass, and we haven't dug deeper. I can honestly say, though, in my almost 30 years of working in this field, I have met very few sociopaths. I want to say just three. Two were men and one's a woman. And in all three instances, or at least in two of the instances, I made the decision not to continue in therapy with them, because sociopaths, their way of thinking is so inbred that even dealing with a therapist, they're not able to fully participate. It becomes a cat and mouse game. It becomes a, how can I out manipulate you? And so I would not be very optimistic about their ability to heal or grow. I just would not. And one person who I dealt with, who I do believe is a sociopath, I said to him, you know, doing therapy with you is not going to be very helpful. And he agreed, because he already knew. And so now the one that I did do therapy with, and I didn't do therapy with him, I basically just coached him. This was a young man who had grown up. He was quite sociopathic. He grew up in another country, and he would go around and kill the neighborhood animals. He grew up in an area where it was more rural, and he would just kill them for fun. And then when he eventually joined the military, he began to, or he was just fascinated with blood, with gore, with that type of thing. He had been involved, he had been not involved, he didn't cause it, but he had been around a training exercise that went completely wrong. And while everyone else was devastated, it actually gave him some exhilaration. It thrilled him. And so we were working with him in a program that I had worked for. And my task when I worked with him was simply identifying what stops him from killing. And what he could identify, the major thing that stopped him from killing in the context that he was in, was that he did not want to go to jail. So I would simply re-emphasize that with him. Was I doing therapy with him? Not necessarily. Was he possibly killing animals when he wasn't around me? That's possible also. But again, I offered this to you because those are people who it would do you well to be pessimistic about them, to try to avoid being around them, to kind of try to keep them out of your sphere of influence. But remember, sociopaths are a small part of the population. Now, some of you may say, oh, I know some sociopaths nowadays, and I agree with you. And that's why I would invite you to make the decision to not have anything to do with them. The second group of people who I think it would do you well to be quite pessimistic about are narcissists. Narcissists are people who are so enthralled with themselves at the expense of others. They can never see what they have done wrong. They are also quite manipulative. They will say mean things, and then when they're called on it, they will say that, oh, I was just joking. They're very sarcastic. They need all the attention. You could be talking about, I have a cold, and somehow the other, it becomes about them. They're not interested in your life. They're only interested in you in regard to how you can aid them or how you benefit them. The challenge with narcissists is that narcissists tend to be in relationships with people. They may have children. They may have siblings. And whereas for a large part of the population, you can avoid a narcissist, you may say, but what about if it's my child? What about if it's my parent? And we'll talk about that a little bit later. I just want to highlight that overall, I'm a pretty optimistic person. Overall, I tend to believe in the goodness of people. And I tell people I would have never become a social worker if I did not believe in the inherent goodness of people. Meaning that I know that people do bad things. I have worked in prisons. I've worked in psychiatric hospitals. I've worked in military bases. I've worked in schools. I have dealt with all kinds of people. But my experience has been people, if they know better, they will do better. That they're responding out of a place of pain. They're responding out of a place of hurt. They're responding out of a place of dis-ease within them. But the two categories I just named, sociopaths and narcissists, stay away from them. Well, we'll get back and talk later about the narcissist because that can be a bit more challenging. So I would invite you in your comments to talk about, is there any type of person that you are just totally pessimistic about? And I know people are saying, well, why is she not saying racist? Well, because I've lived long enough and I have dealt with enough people, and within my own life, I have seen people grow from inherent racist beliefs to where they've become more open, they have become more loving, they have become more kind, they have become more embracing as they gave themselves permission to fight through those false beliefs about the other. And that's why I'm not including them in here. Being a racist does not mean that you cannot change, but the key to that is you have to want to change. You have to be open to change. But again, I asked the question of you all, can you add in your comments any group of people who you believe cannot change, that you should be pessimistic against? And so let me just say this really quickly. I'm not saying if you know someone who treats you badly, who is not good for you, that you should just hang on in there with them no matter what. Nope. Self-care says that you set boundaries and you make good decisions for yourself. What I'm talking about is, but can those people, if they choose to be healed, can they be healed? We'll talk some more about that. I will see you tomorrow, and we will continue to ponder this topic on purpose. Love you.